Did you know that a silent killer known as atrial fibrillation is on the rise globally and could affect 1 in 3 people in their lifetime? This irregular heartbeat condition, which was once believed to impact about a quarter of adults, has seen a surge in prevalence. Danish health experts, after examining health records of millions of adults, have discovered that the risk has only escalated. This alarming increase has left the medical world puzzled, with the exact cause of atrial fibrillation still shrouded in mystery. While it's known to be more common in people with high blood pressure, a common consequence of obesity, the full story is yet to be uncovered. The ailment doesn't just stop at causing irregular heartbeats, it can lead to strokes and has been associated with heart failure. But what exactly is this silent killer, and why should we be worried? Atrial fibrillation is a heart condition causing an irregular and often abnormally fast heart rate. This intriguing medical phenomenon has been dubbed a silent killer, not just for its stealthy nature, but also for its far-reaching impact. So what exactly is atrial fibrillation? At its core, it's a heart rhythm disturbance. In simple terms, your heart is like a beautifully coordinated orchestra, with each part playing its role at the perfect time. But in atrial fibrillation, the rhythm goes askew. The heart rate becomes irregular, and in some cases it races abnormally fast, sometimes considerably higher than 100 beats per minute. This erratic rhythm can lead to a myriad of issues, including dizziness, shortness of breath, and tiredness. These symptoms might sound somewhat benign, but let's not underestimate this condition. Atrial fibrillation is the most common heart rhythm disturbance, affecting around 1 million people in the United Kingdom alone, and it's not choosy about its victims. It can affect adults of any age, but it's more common in older people, affecting about 7 in 100 individuals. The complications of atrial fibrillation are where the real danger lies. The heart's primary role is to pump blood around the body, supplying oxygen and nutrients to every cell. But when atrial fibrillation strikes, this vital process is disrupted. The irregular heartbeat can lead to blood pooling in the heart, increasing the risk of clot formation. If a blood clot escapes the heart and travels to the brain, it can cause a stroke, and that's not all. Danish scientists have found that those with atrial fibrillation have an elevated risk of heart failure. Up to 2 in 5 sufferers will likely experience heart failure, while 1 in 5 will suffer a stroke. These findings underscore the crucial need for preventive strategies and treatments to combat this silent killer. Now that we know what atrial fibrillation is, let's delve into some research that uncovers more about this condition. Danish scientists embarked on a research journey to understand more about atrial fibrillation and its impact. A team of experts from Aalborg University in Denmark set out to investigate the extent of this silent killer among adults. Their aim was to delve deeper into the prevalence of atrial fibrillation, the risks associated with it, and its long-term consequences. In order to gather a comprehensive data set, the researchers analyzed the health records of over 3.5 million Danes. All participants were aged over 45 and had no prior history of atrial fibrillation. This massive data collection effort spanned over 2 decades, providing a wealth of information for the scientists to sift through. The findings were startling. Over a follow-up period of 23 years, more than 360,000 participants were diagnosed with atrial fibrillation. That's nearly 1 in every 10 individuals who were part of this study. This figure is significantly higher than the previously assumed risk of atrial fibrillation affecting around a quarter of adults. To ensure the accuracy of their findings, the researchers meticulously accounted for influencing factors. These included income and pre-existing medical conditions such as diabetes or high cholesterol. They compared the rates of atrial fibrillation over 2 distinct time periods: the first decade of the 21st century and the subsequent 12 years. The results revealed an alarming trend. The overall lifetime risk of developing atrilateral fibrillation was calculated at 31% between 2011 and 2022, a significant increase from the 24% logged in the preceding decade. The risk was also found to be slightly heightened among men. The researchers didn't stop at just identifying the prevalence of atrial fibrillation. They also investigated the potential complications of this condition. Heart failure emerged as the most common complication, with a lifetime risk of 41%. This was double the odds of suffering a stroke, which stood at 21% and 4 times greater than the lifetime risk of a heart attack, which was calculated at 12%. The Danish study, published in the British Medical Journal, has shed new light on the long-term consequences of atrial fibrillation. The researchers wrote, "Our novel quantification of the long-term downstream consequences of atrial fibrillation highlights the critical need for treatments to decrease stroke risk and for heart failure prevention strategies among patients with atrial fibrillation." This comprehensive study not only quantifies the prevalence and risks associated with atrial fibrillation, but also underscores the urgent need for targeted prevention and treatment strategies. It raises critical questions for the research and clinical communities about how the growing burden of atrial fibrillation can be mitigated. So, what do these findings mean for us and our heart health? The Danish study is a wake-up call, a reminder of the silent threat that lurks within our hearts. It's a call to action for individuals, healthcare professionals, and policymakers alike to prioritize heart health and develop effective strategies to combat atrial fibrillation. The results of the Danish study are eye-opening, to say the least. The research took into account factors such as income and pre-existing conditions like diabetes or high cholesterol. They then compared rates across 2 time periods, from 2000 to 2010 and from 2011 to 2022. What they found was startling. The overall lifetime risk of developing atrial fibrillation, an irregular heartbeat condition, jumped from 24% between 2000 and 2010 to a staggering 31% between 2011 and 2022. That's nearly 1 in every 3 people. Moreover, the study showed that the risk was slightly more pronounced among men. But atrial fibrillation doesn't just cause irregular heartbeats. It can lead to more serious health complications. Heart failure, a condition where the heart can't pump blood around the body effectively, was the most common complication. The lifetime risk of heart failure for those diagnosed with atrial fibrillation was calculated at an alarming 41%. To put that into perspective, this is double the odds of suffering a stroke, which stood at 21% and 4 times greater than the lifetime risk of heart attack, which was pegged at 12%. These numbers are not just statistics. They represent real people, real lives that are at risk, and they highlight the critical need for strategies and treatments that can prevent heart failure among patients with atrial fibrillation. The data also underscores the importance of further reducing stroke risk. As the researchers pointed out in their paper published in the British Medical Journal, our novel quantification of the long-term downstream consequences of atrial fibrillation highlights the critical need for treatments to further decrease stroke risk, as well as for heart failure prevention strategies among patients with atrial fibrillation. In other words, we need to do more to address this silent killer for the sake of our health and the health of those we care about. These results underscore the urgent need for heart failure prevention strategies and treatments. While the statistics may seem alarming, remember, knowledge is power. Armed with the understanding of atrial fibrillation and its potential consequences, we can start to take control of our heart health. Maintaining heart health is a combination of preventive measures and lifestyle changes. It's about being mindful of our choices. It's about knowing the importance of regular checkups, understanding our bodies, and being proactive in managing our health. Let's start with the basics. Regular exercise and a balanced diet are crucial. Physical activities like walking, cycling, or even gardening can make a big difference. It keeps our heart muscles strong and reduces the risk of obesity, a known risk factor for atrial fibrillation. Diet-wise, aim to include more heart-friendly foods, such as fruits, vegetables, and lean proteins, while limiting the intake of processed foods and high-sugar beverages. Next, it's important to keep a close eye on our blood pressure. High blood pressure is often linked to atrial fibrillation, so regular monitoring can help in early detection and management. If you have a family history of heart conditions or other risk factors, regular screenings become even more crucial. Stress management is another key piece of the puzzle. Chronic stress can wreak havoc on our heart health, so finding effective ways to relax and unwind is essential. This could be anything from reading a book to practicing yoga or meditation. Finally, don't underestimate the power of a good night's sleep. Poor sleep, particularly sleep apnea, has been linked to atrial fibrillation. So prioritizing quality sleep is as important as maintaining a healthy diet and regular exercise. Remember, these lifestyle changes are not just about preventing atrial fibrillation. They're about improving overall health, boosting energy levels, and enhancing quality of life. In the end, it all comes down to this. Your heart health is your responsibility. It's about making small, consistent changes that add up over time. It's about recognizing that every choice we make can either move us closer to or further from our health goals. Your heart health is in your hands. Take charge today for a healthier tomorrow.